let's go on. And this is from our good friend Colleen in Guyana. And I made a video about a person who asked the question, well, why am I still diabetic? It's not like I go around eating junk. In other words, I don't eat candy and pastries and cake and so forth. But our diet is a high-carb diet in this particular country. So she's from Guyana, and she says this. This video is the best, she starts out. It's where I explain that standard diet is just not going to work for you, even if you don't eat candy and cakes and pastries. She says, I'm from Guyana. My mother did not eat donuts, pizza, and candy, but she was still severely diabetic. The idea that because you're diabetic, that means you've been pigging out on candy all day long, well, you may have, but it's not necessarily so. So she says, my mom, she did not eat that junk food, the so-called junk food of pizza and candy and donuts, which when I say so-called, I'm not saying it's not, it is. But I'm saying you can still become diabetic on some of the other things. What she says is she ate the standard Guyanese diet: rice, flour, plantains, cassava, eddos, E-D-D-O-E-S. I don't know what that is. Apparently a high-starch food. The standard diet, whatever diet, is trouble. And as far as I can see, that's true. There may be some isolated place on the earth where the standard diet is fine. But if there is, I don't know of it. The standard American diet is a nightmare for insulin resistance, as is the standard British diet, Australian diet, African diet, Indian diet, South American diet, Central American diet, Mexican diet, Chinese diet, Japanese diet. The standard diet, the way normal people eat, is terrible. We somehow, as a human race, gravitate toward terrible foods that are not healthy for us. Partly because they're cheap. A lot of the high-carb starches are the cheapest way to live. And I can't blame people for that. If you barely have enough money to live on, and you've got to make that money feed your family for a week, you may have to eat some higher carb foods, but you better be careful, because the standard diet, wherever you live, wherever you're watching this, your standard diet, 99% chance, is a terrible diet that can lead you to diabetes. So she says, my mother ate the standard Guyanese diet, and it is trouble. Yeah, we have the propensity, we human beings, it doesn't matter what country you come from, what race you are, what culture you live in, we human beings have the propensity to move toward a diet that is really extremely unhealthy. Not just a little bit, but extraordinarily unhealthy. And we reap terrible consequences. And typically, we eat like this, and we eat like this, and we eat like this, and we become diabetic. And if we don't seek help and don't do some research, we just die of it. Or we die of a heart attack, which is totally insulin resistant, dependent, in most cases, I would say. So we have all kinds of issues. But sometimes people like you, people that are watching this video, you get so desperate, you start listening to other voices than just hearing some local doctors say, here's some meds, take your meds and hope for the best. They won't say that, but they'll say, take your meds. But they don't really give you much hope, because there really is no hope if all you're going to do is take your meds and not do anything about your diet and lifestyle. I'm not against meds, but you've got to attack this thing with diet and lifestyle. If I was being attacked by someone and I had to pick my weapon of defense, someone bigger than me, tougher than me, and somebody handed me a little pocket knife with about a little 2-inch blade on it used for, carving up an apple, and then the other person handed me a machete, well, guess what? I'll take the machete. Now, the meds your doctor prescribes for you are the pocket knife. They may do a little good. Unless you're type 1, then that insulin will do you a lot of good. But for a type 2 diabetic, those meds will do you a little good. They'll slow down the progression of diabetes a bit. But remember, those meds are a pocket knife. And when you're fighting against a lion, a pocket knife is not going to do you much good, or a 6'5", 220-pound muscular man. A little pocket knife is probably not going to be your best defense. Machete is likely going to help. But with diabetes, lifestyle is bigger than that, more powerful than any machete. It is all you need in most cases to defeat your enemy and get those numbers back to normal or close to normal. Okay. Now, Colleen mentions another thought, and this was in the left under the video where I shared about a man who he had been doing keto for a while, seeing great results, and then one afternoon, or I think it was one weekend, he just pigged out and ate a monster carton of ice cream and had some more brownies or something else the next day. And I mentioned, I don't understand this, how he could have victory for several years. I got kind of slammed for that. People saying, well, it's just addictions. Why can you not understand that? And probably I deserved a little bit of criticism for saying that. It may not have been the most compassionate thing. I was being honest. From my perspective, I really don't understand it. I've never been tempted that way. I honestly, these days, now keep in mind, I've been doing this low carb thing for 20 plus years. I've been doing time restricted eating for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And I'm just never tempted to do that. Once in a while, Benedicta will get some French fries and she'll hand me a couple, and to be nice, I'll eat a couple. That's about as far as I go. So anyway, I don't understand it, but I could have been more compassionate, I guess, and probably not mentioned that I don't understand it. But anyway. Okay, here's a person who says, I've been doing low carb for a year. I can feel my feet and hands amazingly more. Well, I like that. Apparently, what he's saying is, my hands became numb, my fingers probably, and my feet, my toes most likely, but maybe even into the feet, became so numb I could hardly feel them. He says, but now I've been doing it for a year, low carb. I can feel my hands and my feet. Life is returning. What's that describing? Well, think about it for a minute. When we were kids, we were all kind of amazed. It was kind of an interesting phenomenon when our arms would go to sleep, or our feet would go to sleep, or our leg would go to sleep. You sleep in a certain way, and you cut off the circulation, and you wake up and it's all numb and feels weird, and you kind of shake yourself just to get some circulation going and feel normal again. And there are diabetics that feel like that all the time. They're numb all the time. Things just aren't right. What's happening? Circulation. Circulation is a huge problem for diabetics. And part of it is the thickened blood because it's so sugary and syrupy. And you've got to exercise for one thing, but secondly, you got to get your blood thinner. Now, you can take aspirin and thin your blood a bit, but the best way to thin your blood where it's not so syrupy and where it flows better and your circulation increases is simply to cut those carbs down until your glucose is low, and then your blood thins out and your circulation improves. So he's like, I can feel my hands and my feet now. My dentist says my gums are great. He doesn't say, but he is suggesting that his gums were not great before, but now, after a year of low carb, his gums are great. He says, I feel great. My doctor wants to put me on statins. I told him no. He's not on board with my eating. He tells me my cholesterol is high at 215. And different doctors have different ideas about what is high cholesterol. And a lot of the low-carb/keto doctors say don't even worry about cholesterol until it gets maybe around 300. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to tell you what is your ideal cholesterol. I think really anybody who suggests that just total cholesterol is a big deal probably doesn't know so much, because total cholesterol is dependent on your HDL and your LDL. Your HDL should be on the high side. You want it high. The higher, the better. But your LDL, well, that kind of depends on whether you're talking the particles that are big and fluffy or the harder, denser particles. It gets complicated, and there are some that say it doesn't even matter. There are even studies that show that if you're old, like me, if you've got higher cholesterol, you're more likely to live longer than if you've got low cholesterol. So it's all over the map. The whole idea of cholesterol is all over the map. But one thing that most of the low-carb/keto doctors say and nutritionists is that statins are not really a very healthy thing normally.
Probably most of you know my wife Benedicta, but few of you know the amazing paths God has led her to bring her to where she is today. Benedicta was orphaned at an early age and lived with an elderly stepmother growing to adolescence. They were so poor, Benedicta had to drop out of school and sell food door to door for them to survive. As a teen, Benedicta got a job as a housemaid, which developed into a nightmare. She was required to cook, clean, wash, take care of the children, and she had to get up at 4 a.m. every day just to get her work started. Worse than that, she was frequently beaten. At around 20, she moved to the huge city of Lagos, where she started her own little business. Sometimes she prospered, but at other times she nearly starved and went days at a time without eating. At one point, she became so sick she passed out in her room and nearly died. She found herself outside of her body, and she was able to see the splendors of heaven until she was sent back with a command to share her story. One day, however, her life changed when an American evangelist came to her community to preach. And of course, that was me. The rest, as they say, is history. Benedicta has shared her life story in a recently published autobiography, and you can get it on Amazon as either an ebook or a paperback. A link to this book on Amazon is in the description.